You briefly just touched on the media. What is the media's role in either preventing or preventing your type of message and amplifying the message of these bad actors?
Oh, the media is so important. And I know a lot of us are mad at the media and mad at certain publications. But even to take a publication like the New York Times, they do quite a bit that is upsetting, but they also do some really important reporting that makes a difference when they do it. I mentioned the professor at University of Albany who was sidelined for 9 months because Monsanto was suing him. I talked with him the other day and said, how did that turn around? Why are you back in your office now? And he said the media wrote about it. There were 3 stories on the front page of the paper, and now I'm back in my job. So it's just, it gets to the sunlight aspect. It's really important to shine light on things that are happening and to have media do it. Of course, they're very influenced by corporate funding, pharmaceutical funding, agrochemical industry funding. So we don't hear a lot of stories that desperately need to be reported. Or we don't maybe get the full story, even in the New York Times expose. And that's why independent media is so important. And we're trying to do that at US Right to Know. So we get documents and we give them to media, we pitch them to media, we write academic papers about them, and then we also write about documents ourselves. So it's kind of a new model.
Thank you. Our next question is coming from Deborah. Please, where you're from and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you, Stacy. This was an amazing presentation that you did, and I'm really glad that I was listening in on this afternoon. I'm actually from Massachusetts, but I'm currently down south in Florida enjoying the sunshine. And as far as chemicals go, you mentioned about sunscreen and there being importance for it. I could probably put a little debate on that, but I was just wondering, have you done any research on the chemistry of sunscreen and possibly the factor that it's being, like everything else, is being fear upon us and fear of being in the sun? And the reason why I asked that is because for millennia, we've been exposed to the sun in many, without sunscreen, unless it just became a marketing thing. And maybe it's the industry marketing fear of sunshine. And, for people who normally don't go in the sun at all, especially if they're on a plant-based diet, from what we're learning here, perhaps they would start off by going, 5 or 10 minutes at a time and working up gradually with their sunshine exposure. But so my question basically is, have you done any research on the chemicals and the fact that maybe this is a lot of fear, hate to use the word porn, but fear porn on humanity to be afraid of the sun, and that the possibility that sun exposure is not the reason why people get skin cancer?
I think there's certainly something to that. I mean, we could talk about that for a long time. There's definitely something to fear porn. An example is disinfectants, right? Like you can see companies really worked hard. There was a whole marketing campaign to convince people that they needed disinfectants. Now, maybe that's a different situation after COVID, but at one point the FDA came out and said, triclosan and these antibacterial soaps are not even any better than regular soap. So it was just marketing to sell a product. I think there is a similar in the sun situation. I see some new moms like coating babies from head to toe. I never did that. Now my son refuses to use it at all. I I do think there are some better ingredients than others. Zinc oxide, titanium dioxide, not in nano form, but just regular natural form, which just tends to be the chalky kind of white, which people don't like. But if I'm going to use anything, I use that. But even better than that, to use a hat, stay out of the sun, or just in small doses, like you said. But I think it's really good to have a radar up about, do I need this product before we buy anything? And a lot of times the answer is no. And with personal care products, you know, there's just so many things: bubble bath, air freshener, you know, a lotion for every part of your body. It's just like sell. Fragrances for boys, fragrances for babies. They're just always trying to sell us something. And a lot of times it's like just putting petrochemicals on our skin that are not healthy for us.
Thank you. Our next question is coming from Evelyn. Evelyn, please state where you're from and ask your question.
Hi, I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'd like you to talk about the trials that in which the people were awarded millions and millions of dollars linking pesticides to lymphoma. So in my media, I saw a lot of headlines about the money, and I didn't see so much detail about the cancer connection. So did Monsanto manage to keep burying that part of the headline? I mean, how come everyone is not screaming lymphomas being caused by pesticides? I mean, one of the speakers said there's 100,000 people in the United States that now have lymphoma. So how come their stories aren't being heard? How come the whole dollar amount was the headline and the link to cancer didn't get the media coverage?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, it's over 100,000 people are suing Monsanto over having non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I think the number of people who have it is much higher. But the evidence is, I mean, they were able to convince several juries that the evidence was strong enough that glyphosate Roundup, wasn't just pesticides in general, but glyphosate-based Roundup, which, you know, you can buy at Home Depot, many people put on their lawns, is linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And also that Monsanto failed to warn people about the risks. And so there were several large jury awards. There was Lee Johnson was the first, and he was a groundskeeper in California. And then a couple I mentioned earlier who both had non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And there was one or two other big awards. And now Monsanto has won several trials in a row. So it's a fight over this question that you're raising. Does it cause cancer? And a lot of people in the scientific field are saying yes. And not only that, but there's a lot of other health problems associated with glyphosate. And it's only one pesticide among many. So, you know, why the news spins it as money? That's a good question, because people don't like to. Yeah, it's because it's a version of hiding the truth.
Thank you. So you also have another article on your website that talks about scientists complaining about regulatory capture, about the government institutions basically working for the corporations. Can you talk about the government perspective?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of unfortunate stories about the pressure that Monsanto and their allies put on the U.S. government to keep saying glyphosate safe. At one point, there was a scientist in the EPA they were sort of laughing about how he would stop another government agency from doing a study. You know, I think like with anything, and again, we're talking about these huge institutions, there are many good scientists within these institutions. But the political aspect of it, where new leaders come in, people are fired, our funders of our campaigns are going to get the priority. There's just a lot of politics involved in how the U.S. government deals with risk. And I think the bottom line is we can't trust what the government or what the companies are telling us about what's safe. This is true in food, pesticides, personal care products. Like, we have to take it upon ourselves to read the labels. Like, we shouldn't have to do this work. We shouldn't have to be scientists to eat or use products, but we do need to sort of take down that veil of believing that someone else is going to protect us, or believing someone else is looking out for this for us. And we just have to, find the sources that we can trust, share information with each other, look at labels, look behind the stories, and ask questions.
Thank you. You have an article about Coca-Cola's efforts to influence the CDC on diet and obesity. What kind of games did they play, and what is that about?
Well, obesity is a public health crisis, and it's also a corporate corruption crisis. It's about a food system that needs to change. But what Coca-Cola wants to do, and they do this in lots of ways, is put the responsibility on you, the person who ate too much, and that's why you're obese. Instead of, we need to get all of the sugar out of our food system. We need to tax sugary products, however we do it policy-wise. Sugar is a massive public health crisis, and Coca-Cola, of course, has a lot of vested interests in changing the topic away from them, shifting the blame onto this personal responsibility frame. And just to sort of tie that back to like a system and institution like the Gates Foundation, like they're major investors in Coca-Cola through Berkshire Hathaway, which was also a major investor in the Monsanto-Bayer merger. And by the way, he also invests in kidney dialysis machines. So all of this is profitable. To have an unhealthy food system that's making people sick, that you can sell pharmaceuticals for, and the people making money on this system also funding charity is problematic in lots of ways.
Thank you. So, next question is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. That's also corporate capture with regard to the nutrition profession. Is that, you had some writing on that? Can you tell us about that, please?
Yeah. So the American, so the nutritionists and dietitians, the people in hospitals that serve us food. This is an important group of influencers that companies have a lot of stake in how they talk to people about health and nutrition. And unfortunately, what we found with the Academy, which is the largest professional org of nutritionists and dietitians, is that they have corporate partnerships. They at times, message in ways that are good for their corporate partners. They're not going to be telling you to the big, huge problem that ultra processed food and sugar and pesticides can be for our health. So it's very much like, well, it's captured, like you said in the headline. And my colleague Gary did some academic studies about that, where we showed the documents and the sponsorships and how much money they're getting from which companies. And they were very mad about that when we publicized it, but we believe in getting this stuff out into the sunlight. So yeah, there's a lot on our website. You can look under our academic research to see his work on the nutritionists and also Coca-Cola and Coca-Cola's influence on public health conferences, journalists, the way studies are done. There's a lot to it. And it's a lot of what I talked about in my talk, just the many, many multiple astonishing array of ways that companies are trying to control how we think about what we eat.